Hello, everybody. My name is John Lincoln. I am the founder of goimagine, and I want to take a minute to discuss a lot of the changes that have been happening with Etsy over the past few years, and a lot of the angst and a lot of the frustration we're seeing from sellers over the decisions Etsy's making. And I wanted to do a video real quick, maybe just to unpack a little bit of why Etsy has gone the direction they're going, right? What is the real reason Etsy is changing? And it's actually pretty clear to me on why Etsy is going the direction that they're going. I will first mention, though, before I even dive into the changes they're making, is that Etsy is a fantastic company. We at goimagine, we very much admire Etsy. They have done so much good for the handmade world. They literally put handmade on the map. And I'll also say that Etsy is still a fantastic place for makers and artists to make money and to make a living. It is still one of the biggest marketplaces in the world. They still highly promote the handmade space, and they really are doing a lot to drive dollars into makers and artists' pockets. So this webinar is in no way to tell people don't sell on Etsy. In fact, I think if you are a handmade artist, you definitely should sell on Etsy if you're looking to make as much money as you possibly can. That said, it's still at least good to understand Etsy's motivation so that when you engage in a relationship Etsy, you have the right expectations as well. So one thing I always like to talk about when we look at not just Etsy, but any company and the decisions they're making is I believe you can always just follow the money. How are they getting funded? Who owns that company? And if you drill down to the owners of that company, you can oftentimes find out why they're making the decisions they make. So if we go all the way back to 2005, when the original founder, Rob Kalin, started the company, much like most software companies, tech companies, they start small. You always have those stories of a tech company starting out of someone's garage. And Rob Kalin and his partners were no different. They started a great new concept for handmade marketplace, and makers and artists rallied around it. So they started to grow quickly in that first year. Makers found something they wanted to rally around. And Rob, a good entrepreneur and a good artist, I'm sure himself, was excited to build this for the community. Now, oftentimes when a tech company starts to gain a lot of traction and starts to grow big, that's when they need funding to get to the next level. And oftentimes, if that company is showing high growth potential, venture capitalists will come in and help fund the company in turn to gain some ownership in that company. This is very common, and I don't care what large tech company you talk about today, whether it's Facebook or Amazon, you can talk about Microsoft or Apple, you name it, they've all brought on big investors who are investing money in turn to get a big return. And so within 1 year of Etsy starting, they brought on a big amount of investment from Union Square Ventures. So 12 months into the company, over the course of 2006 and 2007, they raised over $4 million from Union Square Ventures. Now, who is Union Square Ventures? They're a venture capital firm. They've invested in companies like Twitter. They've invested in Stripe. They've invested in Coinbase, which is the cryptocurrency marketplace right now. And like any investor, their goal was to get big returns. They put $44 million in. Their goal is to get $40 million back. They want to get 10x return, right? So as soon as Etsy took money from a venture capitalist, they were now on a trajectory to focus on returns to their investors more than focus on mission. And yes, in the early days, they were still really focused on building a handmade marketplace and rallying their community. But in the boardroom, in the background, the real goal was to return shareholder investments, right? Now, Etsy in the early days continued to grow. And as they continued to grow, they also brought on more investors and more funding because, of course, Union Square Ventures wants to see this blow up. And so fast forward a little bit, if I can move my screen. And in 2008 through 10, they brought on $47 million from 5 more VC firms, including Union Square. They brought on money from Excel, Index Ventures, Acton, and Hubert Berta. And these companies have invested in LinkedIn, they've invested in Roblox, they've invested in Dropbox and in Zappos. Again, more money coming from VCs. But when more money comes from VCs, what happens is they get more ownership, right? And when they get more ownership, they have more people on the board of directors. They have more decision-making power within the company. And now that they're into this for over $50 million, the goal is they want to get a ton of money back. If they're in for $50 million, they're looking to get back $1 billion. They're looking to hit a home run out of this investment. And people like Rob Kalin, who did this at the beginning, he was getting diluted along the way. I don't know Rob. I don't know what his motivation is, but from everything I read, I think he's probably a good guy. I mean, he was a carpenter like Jesus. Clearly, he was a handmade person who was trying to do good in the world. But now that you've brought in all these investors, all these traditional investors that have ownership in the company, naturally the mission is going to change because now it's about getting them their money back. And it didn't end there. From 2008 to 2010, Etsy kept growing. And with that, they wanted more money to infuse a bigger growth. And they, along with all these other venture capitalists who put money in, they put more money in, brought another firm in, Glen Capital, and raised another $40 million. So now, over the course of that 7 years that Etsy was growing, $100 million of investment was poured in. Now, your average maker, your average artist, they aren't seeing any of this. What your average person in the public world is seeing is just Etsy's website, their mission statements, their community-driven causes, all that other stuff. What's happening in the background, though, is a company growing through venture capital with a plan to exit for as much money as possible. And it's not surprising that the end goal, how do all these companies make their money? How does these, what do we have here? 6 venture capitalists get their big payoff. Well, ultimately, the goal for a lot of these is to go public. They go public on the NASDAQ stock exchange and they cash out and they make all their money back, right? And so now the end result in 2015 is Etsy goes public. They're on the NASDAQ stock exchange. And once you're on the public stock exchange, companies have one mission: to return as much money to their shareholders as possible. That is the goal of companies that are public, that are on the stock exchanges. So Etsy, as you can see, if you follow the money within the first year, if you were looking at the money, you could see that the moment Union Square Ventures invested in Etsy in 2006, you knew the end result or the goal for this company was to go public and grow revenue as much as possible. Now, I look at this as, I think Etsy was able to stay handmade and vintage. I know they did vintage and craft supplies, but to a lot of people, they stayed handmade for the first, call it 10 years of their growth. And I think that's because handmade is a huge market. Let's just pretend, and these are fake numbers, let's pretend that handmade is a $2 billion market. Well, $2 billion, you can grow pretty big on $2 billion. But if you're Etsy and you want to become a $10 billion company, and the handmade niche is only $2 billion, how do you get to $10 billion if you're in a $2 billion industry? Well, you have to expand out of it. And that's why you start seeing changes along the way. When they bring in like Josh Silverman as a CEO who came from eBay, and then they start allowing production partners into the mix. Well, why do they change to production partners? They most certainly could have just said, you know what, you want to go to manufacturing, there's a lot of other sites to sell on. Well, of course, by opening up production partners, it opened up the ability for them to make more money. And now you're starting to see them edge into other areas, not only with acquisitions of other companies, but also kind of expanding outside of handmade. Now, from a strategy standpoint, this is not uncommon. In fact, it's not only uncommon, it is the strategy a lot of companies go towards. So what can we expect next from Etsy? Well, if we want to predict what Etsy is going to do going forward, you can maybe just look at what companies who were before them were successful did. And as an example was, let's say, Amazon. Everybody knows Amazon. When Amazon started, they sold books. Amazon was a bookstore. They were a book marketplace. They grew really big. When they outgrew that niche, what did they do? They add CDs, they add VHSs at the time and DVDs, and then they get into more and more stuff. And then Amazon is, of course, a behemoth they are today. But not just Amazon. What did eBay do? Well, eBay, when they started, they were a collectibles auction house. People, when eBay started, they were focused on auctioning of collectibles, Beanie Babies and Pez dispensers and baseball cards. But then as eBay grew, they got into more and more categories because they can make more money as they broaden out. And Etsy is very similar. Etsy started with handmade, right? And now as they grow, they're going to move out of handmade. Now, I do believe Etsy is having a tougher time navigating outside of handmade versus Amazon or eBay, who left books and collectibles. And that's because Etsy did spend a lot of time in the early days building a community of handmade. And so now, how do they not rock the boat? How do they not have a complete uprising when they announce to the world that they're going to allow manufacturing onto the site? And I think this is a very tough thing for Etsy. And I understand why, because, how do you make that transition without turning your back on all your original followers? And I think why we're seeing these small changes, right? Instead of seeing one big change where Etsy announces we now have a manufactured category, handmade is still a big part of it, but we also have a manufactured section now. They're making these small changes with like production partners to kind of ease into it. And before you know it, it's changed. And none of this is to say that Etsy is doing anything wrong. Etsy is a fantastic company, as I said earlier. They are following a recipe for success. They are proving that success. So this is not me trying to bash Etsy in any way. This is not an Etsy bash. I admire what they've done, and they have put together a playbook for success. That said, a lot of makers are upset over the situation. They want to know what they can do. What can they do about it? And that's why you see things like the Etsy strike that has started, and you see other things with makers trying to find other places to go. And what I believe, it's not about what a maker can do about it. It's about a maker changing their perspective on their relationship with Etsy, right? I think Etsy did a great job, especially in the early days, getting a lot of makers to join the mission, to join Etsy as part of the community and help lift it up and help grow it, right? And now it feels like Etsy's turning your back on you, as if you helped them and now they're just shoving you aside. Well, the way I look at it is that if Etsy is changing their relationship with you, it just means you need to change your relationship with Etsy. And it doesn't mean that you can't love Etsy still. It doesn't mean you can't sell on Etsy still. It doesn't mean you can't make a ton of money on Etsy still. It just means you have to understand if their motivation is to basically grow their company as big as possible and make as much money as possible. Well, now you're in a business relationship with them where you also can make money, but it's a business relationship. It's not about the love in the community. It's about the business, your business, their business, your partners in the business. But at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for your business and really understand Etsy is a partner in that, but it's not the handmade community that maybe you thought it was when you first joined. Now with that, a lot of makers are asking, okay, that's great. I can sell on Etsy. I'm going to sell on Etsy, but there's now something missing that they've always had before, or they perceived to have before. And so makers are asking themselves, if I can just change my thing here. There it goes. Is that you miss your handmade community and you want to know where you can get it still. My computer is being finicky here. So there we go. So where can you still get that handmade community? The community where makers and artists are working together. There's a love within the community for the handmade niche, and in a community that you can still grow your business, but get to know people and know that the platform and the community you're in cares about makers and artists and not just about making as much money as possible that they can outgrow someday. And that's where, being the founder of goimagine, no surprise here, I definitely want to talk about goimagine and who we are and what our goals are. goimagine is, and my PowerPoint is freezing up here, we are a handmade only community, right? So we focus purely on handmade, and all the profits we make from goimagine are being donated to charity. Our whole mission here is that we are building a caring community of makers and artists who can work together to grow their businesses, while any profits we make are being donated to charity to help children in need. We started this 18 months ago. We continue to grow. And of course, I'm here to tell more makers about what we're doing. Now with goimagine, there's a lot of options of what we've built over time. We have, of course, a handmade marketplace, which is still growing, but as you can imagine, is fairly new. Um, there it goes. And, you know, we continue to grow the marketplace. More and more buyers are coming to the marketplace. More and more sellers are coming to the marketplace. But of course, we're not nearly as big as Etsy. Who is? We are a new marketplace that's being lifted up and driving traffic with our makers and artists. But along with our handmade marketplace, we've also developed now a concept called Mosaic. And what Mosaic is this is really bothering me, is private websites for makers and artists, similar to maybe Shopify or Wix or WooCommerce. And many makers watching this right now might already have your private website. We're offering a private website to our makers where you can have your own branded website that is not part of the marketplace, but all the products on your private website is part of the goimagine marketplace. So you're kind of double dipping here. You're getting your own private website to market your brand and build your brand, while also helping lift up a new handmade marketplace that's focusing on handmade for the long term. We also launched not too long ago a new social app just for makers and artists. It's called Maker Circle. We've got over 1,000 members inside the Maker Circle app right now. You can certainly join it, get to know makers, not just that are on goimagine, but are talking about all different topics around the handmade world. And we also now, within Maker Circle, have the Maker Business Academy. This is an e-commerce training course that we're doing routine trainings within Maker Circle, teaching makers how to build and grow your handmade business. And not only on goimagine, Maker Business Academy is how to grow your business on Etsy, how to grow your business on Amazon Handmade, discussions on how to grow your business at craft fairs and in local places in person, right? So really what we're trying to grow here is a community for handmade artists through different offerings of our marketplace, our private websites, our social app, and our e-commerce training. Best of all, when it comes to Maker Circle, it is completely free. If you want to join and meet makers within our community, you can join goimagine for free. Simply go to goimagine.com and choose the free option, and you will get access into Maker Circle to be part of our community. As for the other plans, we're relatively cheap, right? The lowest plan is only a few dollars to join goimagine. That comes with a goimagine shop where you can post up to 25 products in your shop and sell. You still get access to Maker Circle and the community there. And the plans go up to just $10 a month if you want your own private website, much like Shopify or Wix. We're about a third of that cost, where you can get your own private website. Still post 1,000 products on the platform and get the e-commerce training from Maker Business Academy. So our goal with goimagine is really to support everybody in every way we can that are within the maker community. Now, some of you might say, okay, this sounds great, John. You're throwing all these fantastic things at makers and the handmade community to help us. But, you know, what's going to happen in the future, right? Aren't you going to change just like Etsy? I mean, Etsy started just handmade. How do we know you're not going to turn your back on us just like Etsy did and change their philosophy or their mission? And I can tell you that's not going to happen. And that's not going to happen for a few different reasons. One is that, as I said earlier, follow the money, right? Our funding will never come from venture capitalists. We're not growing a business based on that. One, it's because, heck, VCs will have no interest in us. We're donating all of our profits to charity. So all those VCs that invested in Etsy, they're going to look at us like the Black Plague, because our whole mission is to give the money away and help the world. It's not to make our investors more money. So far, the way we've raised money is our makers. We did a crowdfunding campaign a year ago, and our makers invested money into us. And we plan on continuing looking for alternative funding from the maker community or from foundations and philanthropists and people that want to see our mission thrive. And when you build a business with owners that want to see the mission succeed without a return, an obscene return on their money, now you can make decisions in the business that are focused on the mission and not focused on investors and making the most money back for them. I could certainly talk more in another webinar about us and where we're going, but really what I wanted to talk about in this webinar is to really talk to the makers and artists about, well, how did Etsy get to where they are? And it's not that Etsy has done anything wrong, right? Etsy, I've said already before, Etsy's great, right? I think we all can agree Etsy is fantastic. It's just that maybe because we didn't see in the early days the funding coming in, it wasn't until 2015, 16, 17, 18 was it quite apparent that they weren't going to be a handmade marketplace all the time, forever, because of the funding they got. And of course, I wanted to introduce you to goimagine and the fact that we are doing things very different. We are a growing option for makers and artists to work together, build a community that's focused on handmade, doing good in the world. And at the end of the day, if things work on both sides, we're going to have two fantastic marketplaces. Etsy, where you can make money on a growing large marketplace selling handmade, and goimagine, another marketplace that's only handmade, and we'll have two places to sell instead of one. So thanks for watching. We'll have other webinars in the future. Like us, follow us, share us, join us, do it all. And thank you for your time. Bye now.